Right now, without trying, you are hearing these words. Not just reading them, hearing them in a voice. Try to read without it. You can't. And the reason you can't is one of the strangest things neuroscience has ever stumbled into. The voice has a name. Scientists call it subvocalization. And most people go their entire lives without once questioning why it's there, where it came from, or what it actually is. It feels so natural, so constant, so obviously just part of thinking, that asking about it feels almost absurd, like asking why you breathe. But unlike breathing, nobody fully understands it, and the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Here's what we know. When you read silently, right now, this sentence, your brain doesn't just process the words visually. It routes them through your auditory cortex, the same part of your brain that processes actual sound. Researchers at the University of California confirmed this in the 1970s using electrodes placed on the larynx of silent readers. The muscles in their throats were moving, slightly, imperceptibly, but moving, as if they were about to speak, as if the body hadn't quite gotten the message that no one was listening. That discovery raised an immediate question. If the voice is just a habit, just a leftover from learning to read out loud as a child, then why can't adults turn it off? Trained speed readers try. Meditators try. People who know exactly what subvocalization is and want desperately to read faster try. And most of them fail. The voice comes back. Every time, quietly insisting on itself. But here's what's fascinating. Not everyone has it. Roughly 30% of people report no inner voice at all during reading. No narration, no sound, no sense of words being spoken inside their head. Just meaning, arriving directly. No messenger. For most of their lives, they assumed this was universal. They assumed everyone read in silence. On the other side, people with a strong inner voice assumed the opposite, that everyone heard what they heard. Both groups spent decades inside an experience so private, so completely inaccessible to anyone else, that the disagreement never came up. There was no way to compare. There still isn't really. You cannot share the inside of your head. You can only describe it imperfectly in words. This is not an exaggeration. We have no reliable way to prove what another person's inner experience of reading actually feels like. None. The best we can do is ask. And when researchers started asking, the answers were more varied than anyone expected. Some people hear the voice of the author. Some hear their own voice. Some hear a neutral voice that doesn't belong to anyone. Some hear different voices for different characters when reading fiction, spontaneously, without choosing to, the way a brain might assign faces to names. One study found that people who grew up bilingual often switch which language their inner voice uses depending on what they're thinking about. Not which language they're reading, what they're thinking about. The voice is not a simple playback system, it's something more like an interpreter, translating experience into a form the mind can hold. And that's where this gets genuinely strange. Because the question of why we have an inner voice at all runs into one of the oldest unsolved problems in cognitive science. Thought and language are so deeply entangled in the human brain that separating them may be impossible. When you think, not read, just think, are you thinking in words? Or are you thinking in something pre-verbal, and the voice is just the translation? Most people, when asked, say they think in words. But most people also say their dreams are in color, and about 15% of people actually dream in black and white without knowing it. Self-report is unreliable. The mind watching itself sees what it expects to see. There is a condition called aphasia, caused by stroke or brain injury, where a person loses the ability to produce or understand language. Some aphasia patients report that their inner voice disappeared entirely. Not just the sound of it, the thinking itself changed. Became different, less linear, more like feelings and images and something they struggle to describe, because the words for describing it are exactly what they lost. This suggests that for at least some people, the inner voice isn't just accompanying thought. It might be structuring it, organizing it, holding it in a shape the brain can work with. Language gives memory a skeleton. Without it, some experiences become like water with no container. Now consider what this means for reading specifically. Reading is, evolutionarily, extremely new. Writing was invented roughly 5,000 years ago. Silent reading, as a widespread practice, is only about 1,000 years old. Before the 10th century, reading silently was considered unusual, even suspicious. St. Augustine wrote with apparent surprise in the 4th century about a scholar he observed reading without moving his lips. It was remarkable enough to record, for most of human history, to read was to speak. The words had to leave the body to become real. The idea that you could take language, something fundamentally social, fundamentally oral, and run it entirely inside your own head was, for most of human history, not how anyone used it. The inner reading voice may not be a habit carried over from childhood. It may be something older, a remnant of the time when language only existed out loud, when thoughts that weren't spoken weren't yet fully thoughts. Here's what nobody talks about. The voice you hear when you read is not neutral. It has a pace, a tone, a kind of personality. And that personality shapes how you receive information. The same sentence read in a calm voice lands differently than the same sentence read in an urgent one. Readers who hear a warm, measured voice while reading tend to trust the material more. Readers who hear a voice that feels rushed, or harsh, or unfamiliar report lower comprehension and higher discomfort, even when the content is identical. You are not just reading. You are being read to by a narrator you did not choose, delivering a performance you cannot fully control, inside a theater that only you can enter. Some researchers have begun to explore whether the inner voice is the same system that generates our internal monologue during waking life. The running commentary, the rehearsed arguments, the replayed conversations. If it is, then the voice you hear when you read is the same voice that tells you what to think about yourself. The same voice that catastrophizes at 2 a.m. The same voice that narrates your failures back to you in the second person. You are such an idiot. You should have said something. Why do you always do this? That voice is not separate from you, but it is also not entirely you. It arrived in some form before you had the words to question it, and it has been talking ever since. Most people never stop to ask whose voice it actually is. Think about that the next time you sit down to read. The words on the page are someone else's. The voice delivering them is yours. And somewhere in the space between those two things, between the marks on a surface and the sound inside a skull, is something that might be the most human thing there is. The ability to take language that exists outside you and pull it, effortlessly and automatically, into the most private place you have. You learned to read, but nobody taught you to hear.